All right.
Hopefully we're good.
Yeah. We're just not gonna touch anything though. It's not.
I'm gonna be.
I'm gonna try to sit here for. I'm just not moving.
All right, we are live. Thank you guys for joining us on this, once again, our little Tuesday night Jedi Tree, what do you call it, Fireside Chat. We are keeping warm with some wonderful Star Wars talk with everybody, and we've got some great guests tonight, and we're going to have a lot of fun discussing Star Wars and all that encompasses. Guys, we have the gals of the Galactic Podcast. We've got Jedi Temple Archives, Mr. Rob, and yours truly. Let's get this graphic out of the way so we can see everyone's wonderful faces here. And welcome to you all. Rob, how's it going?
It's going wonderful, man. Just got done talking to Yoshi, and if you posting that podcast later this evening, but ready to talk to both of the lovely ladies of the Galactic Podcast.
Yeah, it looks like they're frozen again. Yeah. Ladies, how are you guys? I'll do Lauren's voice. We're great. You can do Andrea's voice.
When does the payment come through?
Yes. But hey, we got some folks in the chat. Guys, thank you very much for coming early into the chat. I think we're going to refresh the ladies of the Galactic Podcast, have them come back in. But Charlie Skywalker, thank you very much for coming in early. And Shannon, thank you so much. You guys are great, obviously. And let's see, Lauren is telling me to hang on. We will definitely hang on because we've got a lot to cover here tonight on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. This is going to be lots of fun. Rob, how was your day today?
It was pretty good. Just work and constantly thinking about Star Wars.
Yes, totally. And I know we were talking before we started the broadcast, but you said you had a show with Yoshi. Yeah. How's he doing?
He's doing great. He's got some repairs being done to his house. He had his flooding situation there that kind of messed up his office setup, but he's doing good. Enjoying the new baby, and
that's right.
Finally got his wife to watch the Star Wars films. So that was kind of the big takeaway from my chat with him.
Did he finish The Mandalorian? I know, last November when he was here in Chicago, he said that obviously he worked on The Mandalorian, but he said he hadn't seen the series yet. So we couldn't really talk spoilers during our Scarif Con, but did you get any answers from that?
I know that he talked a little bit about some of the stuff that he worked on within the series. He actually worked on episode 4, The Sanctuary, with Gina Carano in it. So he was pretty pumped about that. He'd been following her kind of up through her MMA days, and he's a big fan of MMA himself. So
that's right.
It was a pretty cool opportunity. He got to work on some pretty cool VFX scenes for that episode.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's good. So, while we're waiting for the ladies to come back into the stream, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we've been hearing online on Twitter regarding Star Wars. And it's a very fascinating time. Growing up, I didn't realize I had obviously always hoped that I would kind of live long enough to see the end of George Lucas's story. And obviously after, episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, here we are. And how are you feeling about that? It's a little, kind of nostalgic, obviously. We've got the end of this story that we grew up with. How are you feeling overall?
I thought that, the episode 9 was certainly an entertaining film. I got a lot of enjoyment out of watching it. It was interesting. I kind of went in a little bit nervous to see how they were going to wrap things up, knowing that it was the end of the saga. and I was able to kind of relax about halfway through when I got a feel for what they were doing. I know that you and I had talked a little bit about some of the stuff that got leaked ahead of time, and we had some concerns about how they were going to end it. But as it turned out, I thought that they did the best they could within the time they were allotted. I certainly could have used maybe another 20, 30 minutes just for them to kind of flesh out some of the scenes that they seemed to speed through a little bit. But I think that looking back at the overall 9-film arc, the advantage that they had with both the original trilogy and the prequels was that they really did have George Lucas as the vision behind those. And despite the fact that it got handed off to different directors, he let the directors kind of have their put their mark on the films that they were shooting, but he always drove the vision, and that seemed to be a little bit of what was missing in this last sequel. And I think kind of having JJ have 2/3 of it, he had an idea of where he wanted to go with it. And maybe Ryan, kind of took it a little bit in a different direction. So I felt like they were doing a course correction in episode 9. But overall, I think that, considering that, they did a great job of wrapping it up.
Yeah, I enjoyed probably more so than I thought I would. It was definitely an exciting film from start to finish. Talk a little bit about the performances of the actors. We didn't get a lot of this trio in the previous films all together. Everybody was kind of separated. Let's see, we got the ladies back in, but let's bring them in.
Hopefully.
Hey!
There we go.
You guys are back. You guys are back.
See what happens.
Cross
Yeah.
fingers.
Cross fingers. No, but thank you guys for. That's right. We got the gals from the Galactic. I always want to say the Galactic Podcast. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I like it.
That's
Or it's
the right
just-
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. How are you, ladies?
Good. How are you guys?
We're fantastic. We're just hanging out, talking about Star Wars. So I wanted to. We're frozen again.
That's what I think so.
Rob, I started to talk to you or ask you about the performances of the actors, and I know, again, from previous films that we didn't get quite a nice, mission with all three of them together. But I wanted to ask you, as far as performances from Daisy Ridley, from John Boyega, what did you think of the performances of all the actors in this last film, and how would you compare their performances from the previous films? Did you like their performances? Tell me a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I think they did a great job of doing what was being asked of them in all three films, and in kind of showing the character development. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the last film was that Finn finally kind of came into his own as a character. He wasn't, kind of a secondary character. He was kind of taking control of situations. There was obviously the hints that he was dropping about his force sensitivity, but the fact that when they got on board the Star Destroyer and they were going to go rescue Chewie, and they're like, who knows where we got to go, and they avoided the pitfall of saying that Finn had been working as a janitor on the Star Destroyer and he knew exactly where the cell, the detention bay was on the Star Destroyer. He's like, I don't know, but follow me. And, he's just kind of charging off into danger, fully bought into being a member of the Resistance. And I liked his character a lot more that way. With regards to the rest of them, I thought that given that Oscar Isaac had not really had any scenes with the other two, or limited scenes with the other two in the prior films, that he folded in really well with that trio. And I thought they had some really funny moments. The whole Spice Runner sequence with he and Finn and Ray, where we could do this all day, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty entertaining, and clearly at the end there, when they were all embracing each other, I believe that was one of the scenes they kind of shot late in production, and there was a lot of heartfelt emotion, I think, in that scene. They really had enjoyed working together, and were kind of happy to have wrapped up that trilogy.
Yeah, I think all of them. I think it's probably one of their more powerful performances. I think Daisy Ridley really did her best, and it shows in this film. I think Ray's characterizations, her motivations, and Daisy Ridley's performance was top notch. Same with and we'll talk to the gals when they're back on, but Kylo Ren. I mean, his performance was amazing. I think it was a powerful thing, and again, it seems like he didn't have a lot of dialogue towards the end of the movie, but he was able to, the actor was able to just really bring it home. I think that was a very powerful thing. I think the only thing he said towards the end of the movie was, "Ouch."
Right. As he crawled out of the pit.
Yeah.
Again, you can't throw a force user down a pit and expect him to be dead. And I'll stick with that to the end of time. But I loved his little flourish when he did the Ben Solo challenge, right?
Sure, yeah.
Pulled the lightsaber out, so I thought that was a funny little touch. But no, I mean, Adam Driver, and one of the things that they always tend to do so well within Star Wars is they have characters that are either droids or characters with their faces hidden from us behind a mask or whatever, and they still manage to do an amazing job of emoting despite the fact that you can't see their features. I thought that Kerry Russell's character, Zori Bliss, in this film, I was on the fence about Zori Bliss. I didn't really know how I was supposed to feel about Kerry Russell. She was one of my favorite characters in the entire film. I thought she was awesome. I would like to see more of her.
Turn it down a little bit.
And then, Kylo Ren throughout the entire trilogy, Adam Driver did a wonderful job of really, whether he had the mask on or not, expressing a lot of emotion and carrying that role with a lot of authority.
Yeah, girls, I'm glad you guys situated the internet problem. You guys look fantastic.
Situation normal now.
How are you?
How are you guys? Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Everything's fine. We're all fine here.
We're all fine. We're all fine. So I wanted to ask you guys, because I was talking to Rob about this, Adam Driver's performance, actually all their performances, all the actors in Rise of Skywalker were really, really good. Even, I wanted to say even better than the last two films. You guys in your last episode of your podcast talked about Adam Driver and how incredibly, his performance. I was just telling Rob how, I didn't really notice it. I heard it and you guys are talking about how the last portion of the film, he hardly had any lines except for "ow." But, talk a little bit about the actors' performances. What do you guys think of them in Rise of Skywalker?
You want to go first?
Yeah.
I'll go first.
I'll go first. What up? Hey. So I think Daisy Ridley's performance was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
I remember at the beginning of Last Jedi, I was a little iffy on some of her lines to Mark Hamill, like with Luke Skywalker, and I was like, oh, I don't really know, but I feel like she really fell into character in the Rise of Skywalker, and just that last scene with just what she communicated with her eyes, and that feeling of that look of desperation. Oh, and when they were fighting on the Death Star, remember I said that she looked exhausted and just completely left of any kind of will that she had inside of her, and she was just about to lose it. And just great performance on her behalf.
Yeah. No, yeah. Daisy, that's probably one of her best performances, I think, in the trilogy.
You want to talk about your boy?
Well, yeah, let's just get to Adam Driver, because that guy is on a whole nother level for me. I think that him not saying anything for the last third of the movie, but you still felt what he was going through. I don't know if you guys felt that too, without nonverbal communication, you felt oh wow, he's going through that emotion, his looks, his eyes, his just his mannerisms were just it was so on. And that's, I think in TFA he was good. It was a good introduction. And then Last Jedi he was great, I think. And then this performance I think was just by far the best.
Yeah.
For me. I think he's probably the best out of all the new actors in Star Wars. I think he's probably been the best for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's good when they bring in these powerful actors, getting off subject for a second, when the last Avengers movie, what was it called? The
Endgame?
Endgame. Yeah, I really, the actors that they brought in that, I mean, there was some real emotion there, and it really helped to sell the situation, the situation that's kind of out of this world, a fantastic, sci-fi-ish kind of a situation. And I think it really helps. I think it really helps to sell the story when they bring in some really great actors. And again, Daisy Ridley and Andrea, I would agree with you that her performance in this film is probably the best of all three of the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And I too, one of my favorite, we can start talking about favorite moments in The Rise of Skywalker. You had mentioned the fight with Kylo and Rey on the Death Star, and it almost seemed like Kylo was testing her, and she was definitely getting tired. You can see her, trying as hard as she could, and there's moments where she's like grabbing her hand because it's got to be tiring to fight at that intensity. But they did a really, really great job with that sequence.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, that whole fight to me was more like two people just very like at that time angry, and like they were just using like their aggression and just being like hammers and not being like the finesse like Jedi that we've seen before, like Obi and Qui-Gon Jinn, for instance, in like the Phantom Menace, how they were fighting Maul. It was more finesse. It was more, to me, that, and then even in Ben Solo at the end, he was way more finesse than he was just as Kylo Ren is just like a hammer, like just striking and trying to get that like really fatal blow. That's what I felt like that fight was for me anyway on the Death Star. And
I always felt too that Kylo was testing her.
Yes.
Now Kylo had this information about her, and I don't know if he believed Palpatine to begin with. And I think even from the beginning when she was trying to take the shuttle down where Chewbacca was in, and the lightning came out, and he was like, so I even back then I think he was putting these tests towards her, and especially with the fight during the Death Star there.
How did you guys feel about that scene? Her bringing the ship down and pulling the ship. What was your initial reaction?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was great. I didn't have a problem with it. Again, there was some time that came, between the ending of Last Jedi and the beginning of this. You can tell that even with some of the lines, you can tell that there has been some experiences between the characters, and how can you not love Chewbacca? And if he's being captured, you want. You want to rescue him. I didn't have a problem with that scene. I think is really emotional. Obviously some people complain about the bait and switch, but I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, I saw two shuttles. In that wide shot. One was off to the to the back there, but I didn't have a problem with it. Rob, did you?
No, I didn't have a problem with it. I agree. I saw both shuttles as well when they were doing the establishing shot. But the interesting thing for me was that it was a great callback to kind of the Force Unleashed video game, where you've got Galen Merrick or Starkiller trying to pull down the Star Destroyer. So that was a cool callback. And it was it was kind of. It was a new version of the battle for the lightsaber that they had in The Last Jedi as well. But everything that they did in this episode was really to show that where in The Force Awakens, Rey kind of had the upper hand in terms of the strength battles, trying to call the lightsaber to their hand. The Last Jedi, they were pretty much at a dead stalemate, and now you've got Kylo with the advantage. And it really all was tied around making Rey doubt who she was. I mean, she was no longer sure of herself. I think that, certainly to the point the girls made about when they were fighting on the Death Star wreckage and the fact that they were both just kind of hammering away at each other and using their anger, that was very much against what Leia had been training her to do, at the beginning of the film and through her training prior to that. So she'd kind of gotten away from who she was, and it was really about doubt and her questioning herself, and that kind of played into the whole confrontation with Palpatine.
Yeah, speaking of Palpatine, you guys were talking about the connection between Rey and Palpatine. Give me your initial thoughts when you guys saw the movie and they kind of made this assertion. Andrea, what did you think
You go
specifically?
first.
I was perfectly fine with it. I'm a huge Palpatine fan. I read Darth Plagueis. It was the first novel I've ever read, Legends instead of canon. But his backstory and his strength and his evilness and his manipulation and I liked that he made his way all the way to the Rise of Skywalker. I was fine with him being in that. However, they brought him back. I know there's a lot of different rumors. I think it's awesome that Rey was a Palpatine. I always said I wanted her to be something big and not just a nobody, but I was cool with that. So, yeah, I liked it. I thought it was awesome. I always said she was a big deal. What does she say to BB-8 in the beginning of Force Awakens? Classified, me too, big
deal.
secret.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lauren doesn't like it.
I'm fine with like him coming back and her being like related to him. I was always okay with that idea. Mm-hmm. I think I wish it would have been executed a little bit differently. Like I just feel like all of a sudden it was, oh hey, he's alive, which is fine. Like that makes total sense because he was the true Phantom Menace of this entire saga.
Right on.
So awesome, I love it. I think the point where it lost me was like when Rey said that she was his granddaughter. I was just like, how does that even make sense? Like, where did that even come from? Like
Palpatine got jiggy with someone.
I get right though, and that's just like
Lauren can't wrap her brain around it.
And I'm like trying to do the math too. I'm like, wait a minute, like that must have happened between this period and that period, and his face was messed up after Windu. Like, what is going on?
If
like,
you listen to our last podcast, we're not good at math
No,
whatsoever.
yeah, well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I was cracking
who
up.
even knows
Yeah,
what
that's
year
fair.
this all happened in?
That's fair. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it. Like, I don't have like a real problem with her being related to him. I thought that was a good kind of a character switch and like a deeper like depth to her and like a little more understanding of what was going on with
The
her.
conflict,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I still don't. I don't know. I struggle with that. I mean, I'm fine with it. I think the first time I watched the movie, I was very like all right, like they went that way. And I think I even told you after we saw it, I'm like, God,
You didn't like that.
yeah. But after like I've seen it 5 times, you've seen it
Six,
and I'm fine with it now. Like I'm like okay, like it's just one of those things that okay, it's a decision they made, fine with it. Like I move on. Like no reason to go on Twitter or Facebook and get like all mad about it. Like it is what it is.
just in front of me.
Just in front of you. Yeah, that's true.
How are we going to get clicks if we're not pissed off about something?
Yeah,
Right,
fair.
yeah.
Yes.
But you know what though, you guys were talking about execution and how the creative choices might have been a little better, and I kind of agree with you. I wish they would have gone the route of maybe not an offspring of Palpatine.
2 movies.
Well, yeah, 2 movies for sure. But maybe, they could have revisited the whole Rey as a clone created by Palpatine scenario.
Talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I just don't think Palpatine, ruling the galaxy is very busy work. I don't think he had time for a relationship. Where do you find,
That's where I struggle with.
I do a podcast. I'm married. I have a kid, and I have basically 2 jobs. I own a business. And where do you make time to have a relationship as Palpatine?
Yeah. And him running like the galaxy, like that was his whole purpose. Like that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to control the entire galaxy.
I don't really think he was like schmoozing anyone or had a relationship with anyone. I think it was very calculated, whatever he did. He either saved some of his stuff, put it in someone, or it was a really quick thing. Maybe
fair.
transactional exchange, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
It happened.
We talked about, I think, what was it, in one of our latest podcasts, is that we thought maybe Rey could have been, I don't know, like not a clone per se, but like somehow he manufactured her. I don't know
And
about
she got
clone.
away.
Yeah, I don't know
Just-
about
just
cloning or
like-
something like that.
Just like Snoke, you saw Snoke in a jar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been. Yeah, it wouldn't have been far-fetched if Rey was also another creation of Palpatine.
Yeah.
And even in the expanded universe where you have the story after Return of the Jedi where Palpatine clones himself,
Right.
in case, so he can transfer his essence to another more healthy body. He did it with Luke, etc. in the expanded universe, the Dark Horse comics. But Rob, what did you think about Palpatine coming back and announcing that, hey, you're my grandchild?
Well, I think now we have an explanation for. Within the Mandalorian, we've seen that what we once thought was an ice cream maker is actually a container for carrying around very valuable stuff. So
Yeah.
I think the guy who was escaping Bespin with that ice cream maker actually had Palpatine's seed. I didn't realize it until the ladies from the Galactic podcast said that was probably what happened. So
Yeah.
Canon now.
thinking,
Canon.
yeah, as far back as Empire Strikes Back.
I picture like in Jurassic Park that shaving cream that he had, and he opened it up, pulled those things out.
There you go.
That's what I see.
We're gonna blow up the internet with this theory.
Newman.
Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, clearly it was a little out of left field. I got the impression that they wanted to steer clear of the cloning route. And
Yeah.
that surprises me a little bit because cloning has been established for quite some time within the Star Wars galaxy, and certainly, like you were talking about, within the Dark Empire comics that are no longer part of canon, that essence transfer into other clones was kind of how he kept himself alive. So they had a basis for going that route if they wanted to, and I don't think it would have been that difficult for fans to accept that.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
it's harder for a lot of people to try to figure out how this whole Palpatine love child thing happened.
And I think it was right there too, like the cloning. And then in the beginning of the movie, the Dominic Monaghan's character was like,
Dark
science and cloning,
Cloning,
like that was a
Sith
big thing.
magic.
So like it was right there for them to use, and they could have, expedited that into Rey's story, but they didn't, and that's fine. And like they were just like, nah, she's like legit granddaughter of Palpatine, which is, it's a choice, and that's fine. I'm okay with it now. But now you had to go into like, all right, well, where's his son? How did that? Where is all that now? Like you have to get all these books, which is cool. I'm here for all the extra material we're gonna get now. Like Palpatine book,
Yeah.
I like give it to me. Like I'm ready for it. But
What's
they
funny
might
though?
even had to have gone down that route if they just maybe stuck with the whole cloning thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it seems like they overcomplicated this situation by giving him like a family or like a relationship.
Right.
I think the whole cloning thing, and who knows, we could be having the same conversation on Twitter saying, well, you went the lazy route and she was a clone. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not
that
sure
would've happened.
I'm not sure if this alternative would have been better. As far as execution, and obviously, the creative choices that were made, whatever. But it's interesting. I wanted to ask you guys on a technical level because folks in the chat are saying that we hear an echo when Rob and I speak. I don't hear it when you guys speak. Is there a browser window somewhere that's playing the YouTube?
No.
No.
I'm wondering if there's two mics. Like we have the mic here picking up, and I wonder if it's picking it up from somewhere else.
maybe. Try to.
Let's see something real quick.
I don't know if we can.
Audio to the left.
Let's see.
Go wait. Switch from that to that and see if that changes.
Ooh.
That changed it. That muted you.
You guys hear us?
Yeah.
You hear us?
Yeah, but it's not as crisp anymore.
All right, hold on.
And I still hear myself in the background.
All right, hold on.
No, that was
Yeah, we
bad.
disabled the audio processing too.
Yeah, maybe turn that down.
Okay.
Too loud? How about that?
No, that's fine.
Is that
Yep.
good? Okay.
I
How's
can
the
still hear
volume?
me in the background a little bit, but we'll figure it out. Growing pains, right?
All right.
So let me see what
I
our
know what it
notes
is.
say.
I wonder if this will work.
Turn it off. Kind of.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, how about you?
Oh, yeah.
Drop that.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I don't hear echo anymore.
Nope. Nor do I.
Better?
Yeah, but you're frozen.
See, I think this is where we get.
Yeah, the Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Oh, the Bluetooth messes the internet? No way. Do you guys have corded ones?
We should get our headphones.
Yeah. Time out.
Hold on. We'll be right back. Hold on.
Alrighty. So yeah, guys, thank you very much for being in the chat. So some of the other things that we're going to talk about with the girls is redemption, the meaning of redemption in the Star Wars universe. It seems like there is some very interesting takes from some of the other Star Wars accounts, and what redemption means. There was some folks that were definitely upset regarding, Kylo's demise and his character. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the future of Star Wars, big screen versus small screen. What else, Rob?
Oh man, let's see. I got to pull up the list of stuff that you had put down. You already said Ray Palpatine, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about that. No, I mean I think it's all fair game at this point.
Charles has a comment there, the rule of two, and that's a very interesting, Sith rule, talking about the rule of two, which is interesting.
All right. How's that?
That is fantastical.
Yeah.
Turn it down a little bit.
There you go. All right. We're ready.
She just wants
Wonderful.
you to turn us down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I asked for. I was like,
Exactly.
I don't even want to hear that. Just kidding.
So, real fast, before we get back into it, I wanted to ask you guys, Andrea, Lauren, how did you guys start your podcast? When did you start? I know you guys are related. And just wanted to get the quick cliff notes on how you guys started.
You want to go or you want me to go? think so.
At family get-togethers, Lauren and I would just sit at a table and discuss Star Wars.
Especially when
When The Force Awakens came out and The Last Jedi, and my cousin Lauren's brother Joey would just sit there and say, "This needs to be a podcast." He was like, "People would listen to this," and we were like,
no, they
"No,
won't.
they wouldn't."
No, they won't.
And I'd be like, "Anyway, Ray this, Ray that."
Yeah. And then we like a year, I think we talked about it for like a good year, and we were like, you know what, let's just do it. And we did it, and this is kind of where we're at with it.
Yeah.
And honestly, like we said before, like we really didn't think like people would, outside of like our immediate family, like listen to us. And
Hi, Mom.
just, like, yeah. People tweet us, you guys have us on your show, so it's crazy to us.
It is.
Yeah. It's been a
Super
lot of fun,
grateful.
though. Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things that we'll talk about in a minute is Star Wars Twitter, the good and the bad. I know I just recorded like a 1 minute little piece for the Bombad cast guys. They were talking about Star Wars fans and the surprises and all that stuff. And Brad and I started our podcast back, right after Star Wars Celebration, and we've been flabbergasted and surprised and humbled at the amount of support and the collaboration that people are so open. Obviously, like you guys and Rob driving all the way down here to Chicago to participate in our live event that we had last November was like amazing. I'm like, oh my God,
That's cool.
And
I would do it again in a heartbeat too. It was so much fun.
It is, and whenever I'm a guest on somebody else's show, we talk for like an hour and a half, and it's like, wait a minute, it's an hour and a half. We just started. It's just, it is definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of fun. I mean, we've been, talking to you guys, talking to a bunch of other like podcasts and just other Star Wars fans, and it is cool, like you're talking about, just the fandom it can be fun. Like I was able to go to Celebration this year or last year in Chicago, and that was amazing. And that's where you really feel like that's Star Wars. Like that's the fans. Like that's where it's at, really.
What's
it's
funny?
Not just people walking around, but like with their kids, and they're dressed
Sure.
up as like a little Rey or a little Kylo. It's so fun.
It's funny. I see a lot of people posting that they either started or they were here in Chicago, and like all the friends that we've made because of the podcast, you guys have been to Chicago, and I think that's really cool. I love it. I would have liked to have known you guys while you were here, but that would have been really, really awesome. But hopefully, I'll win the lottery and I'll just fly everyone to Chicago and we can just have a big Star Wars party.
I love it. Yeah, we're there. Count us in.
That's my plan, Rob.
We're on the ground floor when Scarif Con goes big, right?
So, Lauren, I think it was you that posted something recently regarding putting your opinions out there about Star Wars and how the fandom, I guess, either treated that post or had issue with it, with your opinion. Talk a little bit about that tweet. Talk a little bit about that post. And I know, somebody in the past had called our podcast like Switzerland because we're cool with whatever opinion, as long as nobody's an asshole about it, to each other. But tell me a little bit about your experience with that tweet in particular, because it's very interesting to me. Because in the past, I had a Twitter account which I closed down because it just got really, really bad. And I was telling you before we started the broadcast how Charlie Skywalker was harassed and almost, scared him down. But tell me a little bit about your experience, why you tweeted that. No specifics. I was just really curious to find out, how you deal with that obviously as a Star Wars content creator.
Yeah. I think sometimes on Twitter you do see where people are like going at it, and it could be for a variety of reasons. Their opinions are different. They, whatever it is. And it's just, I think sometimes you just have to like put yourself out there and just be like, listen, everybody just kind of chill out, relax. Like it's Star Wars, like just enjoy it. If it's, if you have a different opinion, that's okay. Like it's okay to have a different opinion. Like Andrea and I, we see Star Wars differently, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about it. And that's okay. Like, and I think you have to get into the mindset of like, it's okay to agree to disagree. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that person says that, I say this, we might not agree on it, but then again, it's okay. Because I think the more you kind of have those civil conversations, you learn something, and maybe from their view that you didn't see before, and vice versa. Maybe they're like, oh, you know what? I never really thought of it that way. Instead of going straight to, like we say, the negative sauce about stuff, like just going straight like, well, your opinion's wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about. And then I feel, especially for female fans, like in female content creators, it's a little bit, I'll be honest, I feel like it's tougher for us just because.
Yeah, we almost have to justify what type of fan we are.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, not everybody feels that way. I mean, obviously we have a lot of people just like you guys, support us and
accept us,
but there is that little small void in Twitter and, out there that don't think highly of, female content creators. So that's just how I feel about it.
Andrea, you just said something interesting. You said you have to justify what kind of fans we are. What do you mean by that?
I just think of some like personal experiences. Like one of my coworkers, when he first got hired in, he had a Darth Maul tattoo on his arm, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love Star Wars!" And he was like, "Oh, you like the Disney Star Wars?" And I'm like, "No, man, I grew up original trilogy." And he's like, "Oh, I like the prequels," and I was like, "Really, dude? Come on, who likes the prequels?" But now I do. I like the prequels. So, but I had to like be like, no, I had to give them all my Star Wars lingo. Like, do I pass the test? Kind of like when you're trying to get in on a Facebook group and you have to answer all the questions that show that you're capable of being, a good participant, who's your favorite character, what's your favorite movie, all that stuff.
Right.
That's
It's almost like they're testing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, subconsciously, I think every fandom kind of has that litmus test. I think we do it subconsciously.
Yeah.
Could be good, could be bad, but at the end of the day, I had also posted something kind of slightly controversial. I posted a quiz, which wasn't a real quiz, but I wanted to kind of draw attention to it. Are you a casual fan? Are you what kind of Star Wars fan are you? Are you a casual fan or are you a real fan?
Right.
And folks got like people started texting me like personal, just like what are you talking about? We're fans all over the place. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm trying to make a point here. So it is very interesting. Rob, have you had any experiences like that? Obviously, we're all Star Wars content creators, but it's hard for me to think of how you ladies relate to Star Wars Twitter. I just can't get it wrapped around my head that it's different for ladies than it is for guys on Twitter, and it's infuriating to be honest with you. It sucks because there shouldn't be that line. Obviously, there's a gender line, but as far as like Star Wars fans who are doing this for fun, I think there should be no line in the sand. And it's unfortunate that there is.
Yeah, I haven't experienced it personally. I just, anytime I post something, I preface it with the fact that I'm 6'4" and pushing 300 pounds. And, that basically tends to keep people away. But, I don't know. Part of the thing with me is I just always approach it from the standpoint of making sure that people understand that, look, this is what I'm saying, but this is my opinion. You're allowed to have your opinion. We can both be right. I mean, I don't care what people like, what people don't like, as long as you have a reason for it and you're not hating on people that won't agree with you, then I don't see the harm, right? It seems to always be the people who say, this is my opinion, and if you don't agree with it, then
wrong.
You're an idiot.
Or you're toxic.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and to your point, I mean, you can say something, and if someone is coming in expecting to take offense at whatever gets posted out there, they're going to take offense at it whether it's intended or not. And I think that is a place that a lot of people come from on social media, especially these days. But I've been fortunate. I haven't had to deal with it personally. I'm sure it's going to happen at some point. I think it's inevitable kind of with the environment that we've got out there. But I just hate that. I mean, I've got close female friends that are huge Star Wars fans, and they've got their own opinions about stuff, and I have no problem with that. I don't see gender really having anything to do, or any kind of creed, race, whatever the case may be. It shouldn't really matter. I mean, we're all enjoying this. It's art in its own right, and people are going to view it differently, and that's okay.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, Rob, you got a fan on in the chat, Mr. Bragg.
Yeah, good friend Brian Kiger. We go way back. We went and saw Last Jedi together, and he had kind of fallen behind a little bit on watching the film, but he seems to be getting back into it. So
Nice.
always appreciate having people from home that are supporting the show. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Like I said, Brad and I started this podcast a while ago and brought Alex in to help out. Brad is in the Navy, so he gets deployed and gets shipped out from time to time. And then I'm left with no one to play with. So we brought Alex along to kind of help out, and it really has been a fantastic ride, meeting a lot of great people. I think one of the things that I love doing as a content creator is just collaborating. We've done a lot of like crossover episodes with Andrew and Marisha from Coruscant Radio and Pete Fletzer and
Pete,
I mean it's just really, really cool. And I think when we first started, we had a group of Twitter followers that were like fandom menacy, if you want, if you know. But I think, we're just here to have fun and respect each other's opinion on this wonderful franchise that we all know and love. But it's an interesting time.
Yeah, it is.
I was telling Rob, obviously, and I guess you guys too. I mean, original trilogy fans, we've been at it for quite some time. And we made it. This is the end of the Skywalker saga. Are you guys sad that there's going to be no more Star Wars? It's all over with. What do you guys think?
Don't answer. Oh, the end. It just doesn't seem like it could ever be the end. There's way too much information that still needs to be revealed to us. But I said on the podcast that first viewing on Thursday night, when I left the theater, I was disappointed on how the movie ended and closed out the trilogy, closed out the saga. But I've came around. I ate something. I feel better.
Stay hydrated.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a better ending to the trilogy than it was to the saga. I felt.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I would have liked a little bit more Anakin,
more callbacks from the
callbacks,
prequels,
Chosen One, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I know I had posed that question to you guys in your last podcast, asked the gals regarding the Chosen One situation. We're hearing all these rumors on Reddit and leaked story points and all that stuff. But it does almost seem like there is some truth to it, because there are people that are saying that the ending of Rise of Skywalker that they saw in the theaters might have been a different one that was reported to have been screened at Lucasfilm. What do you guys think of all those rumors that are coming out? And I know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Anybody can go on Reddit and post, rumors. You obviously have to take it for what it is, unsubstantiated rumors. But sometimes when they get it right, it's very interesting. And then the next time something comes out, you're like, could this be true? But I, too, I agree with Rob. I don't think... I think the ending of Rise of Skywalker was okay for this trilogy. I'm not sure if it did any justice to the end of 9 movies. I really wanted to see Hayden back in this...
Yeah.
To kind of let Rey know. If anything, maybe bring Kylo into the fold and say, "Hey, dude, what you're doing is wrong. You got to help her out." But it's a very interesting storyline. What did you guys think? And I'm running your podcast, your last episode, back in my mind, because I just listened to it again for the second time. Regarding the whole Mortis arc, and I find that storyline so intriguing. And I know that if they would have introduced all that stuff, and Rob, we talked about that with Trevor Beast a while ago in an episode. Those storylines obviously are like way out there, but. And I do think that if they were introduced in this film, it probably would have needed another film just to kind of set things up.
Yeah.
Because it's a really deep cut with like fans like us, I guess, people that might have seen the movie like once or whatever and not really into the extra stuff will not get it unless there's a lot of exposition that explain like what the hell what is going on. Right. But I think it would have been a very different movie. I think it would have been a very interesting storyline to kind of take that direction. What do you guys think of that storyline? I mean, as far as bringing a story from the extra material like the comics and the cartoons, this is a big universe that spans millennia of little stories all over the place. What do you guys think of that extra stuff that kind of helps explain some story points of the films? I'm not too crazy about helping explain story points in the film. I like it better to enhance the film that I've already seen. I would just love a film just to, this is the film. It explains everything from A to B. And obviously no film is going to do that. There's going to be a little bit of questions in the background. But it's almost like they're throwing all this stuff out there, and you no longer can be a casual fan. You have to really dive deep into all the extra material. What do you guys think of the extra material as a supplement to these films? Andrew, how you doing? Thank you very much, Coruscant Radio Underground, for joining us. He was just eating a big bowl of gumbo and didn't realize he was missing this. Well, it better be some good gumbo because we got some good Star Wars talk here.
You got to bring some to share.
For that material, saying like if it explains the narrative kind of outside the movies, it doesn't have to you don't have to read this comic to understand this point in the movie or watch this show. Like you could have, like you're saying, you could have introduced that idea of the Mortis arc, and then maybe like being like fans like us, like our casual fan friends, like our family, we could have been like, oh yeah, well, you know what, if you watch like this and this, you'll get a better understanding of what that kind of was all about, instead of, you know, like having to actually read it or see it to really understand it.
I like how it accents it after, not prior. Like I read The Resistance Reborn, and I was highly disappointed how it didn't flow into the movie that well. But I do appreciate the things that came out after. So The Rise of Kylo Ren and how it accented the movie. That type of tying in all different medias is cool. But the lead up, and to think that a book is going to show up in a movie or a show is going to show up in a movie, I think that's too difficult, and it kind of ties everybody's hands that are creating that movie. So I like after the fact media.
And that's kind of, if you think about like Lucas, like that Lucasfilm story group, like that is, I know a lot of people give them grief at times, and you know, Pablo Hidalgo,
Poor guy.
yeah, poor guy. Him and Matt. I can't remember Matt's last name, but like how they have to just take those questions on Twitter all the time. It's just like, you know, it's hard to try to keep all that in a narrative line
And try to
when you
satisfy
don't have it.
everybody.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this, like where it's like Marvel has so many years of content that they can pull from and use.
Whatever
like
they want.
literally, Lucasfilm is building that. Like, you know, they started with the 3 films, the original trilogy that George used, and now they're trying to expand that. It's not like, you know, Stan Lee created these comics like 80, you know, for the past 80 years, and you can pull from whatever you want from it because it's such a broad scope of, you know, material to use. So it is hard on that.
Yeah, but don't you guys feel like it's hard? It would be harder for Marvel to do it because they have like so much more than Star Wars per se.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, yeah, but then in a way, Marvel can take like, oh, you know what? There's this storyline from this run of comic. We could introduce that in this way, and you know, kind of have it all kind of make sense. Like they can pick and choose. Whereas, like for me, I feel like Lucasfilm, like they don't have much to choose from per se. Like they have the movies, and now they have like they're starting their canon as they call it. So now they can pull from it, and they can pull from the EU and Legends too, which they have.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, I feel like it's tougher for Lucasfilm, and me personally.
Rob, what do you think?
No. I think that Andrew made an excellent point that Force Collector was definitely the best of the Journey to the Rise of Skywalker books.
I didn't read that
I
one.
have it.
I
I
read
gotta
Spark
read it.
of Resistance and Resistance
I gotta
Reborn.
read
I
it.
didn't read Force Collector. It's on my list.
Yeah, it's really good. With regards to the Lucas Story Group, I'll be very interested to see kind of what comes out over time. There was some information out on Reddit that perhaps the story group had been cut out of a lot of Rise of Skywalker, and JJ had been given kind of the ability from Bob Iger directly to bypass Kathleen Kennedy and the story group to kind of get things back on track. I don't know if that is in fact the case or not, but it would certainly explain some things, some inconsistencies that occurred, plus the whole thing about I had listened to Rise of the Resistance, and I personally wasn't a big fan of it. I thought there was it was kind of in service to tying in a lot of video game stuff and some other stories, and I didn't think Leia was really written that well personally.
No,
but
I agree.
yeah, well, good. I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
I mean, it worked for the storyline.
Sure.
But,
Yeah, it worked for the story, but it was kind of the way I felt about Mark Hamill within The Last Jedi. It just didn't seem to be the voice of the character that I was familiar with. But all that aside, I just think that this is going to be interesting to see. Kind of as time goes on, what information really comes out, how much of a schism really was there with the directors in these three films, and did that explain kind of why the story jigged and jagged a little bit. But regardless of what the case may be, I was super happy with how entertaining episode 9 was, and I'm going to see it again this Friday.
Nice. Jigged and jagged, man, that is putting it mildly. But it's and here's the other thing too. Somebody had posted, how much does it matter? Like later on, like in 5 years, if somebody writes like a tell-all book and says, "Yeah, JJ did this and they didn't let us do that," I mean, is that going to matter in the long scope of things, or is that just a curiosity thing for us like Uber fans? That because now that the third movie is out, we can see, the three movies kind of the way they are, and this is what we got. For me personally, it really doesn't seem like they kind of, mapped it all out.
Yeah.
Either story arc, overall story arc, character development. It just doesn't seem like there's a direction there. It almost seems like Kathleen Kennedy just took a director and said, "You do this one, you do that one, and then you do this one." And when you're doing a trilogy, I think that's the wrong way to approach things, because the trilogy has to really have like one voice that guides the story and guides the characters. And I'm, and again, we're never going to know, unless we're in the mind of Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger, or somebody, tells, writes one of those tell-all books. But, hopefully with everything that has happened within the fandom, hopefully Disney will step back and kind of take a look and say, well, all right, we kind of messed some things up over here. Let's try to do something a little better. Let's see what we can do. A multi-million billion-dollar corporation is never going to say, "Hey, we screwed up." They're never going to say that. But us as fans, I think because we have so much invested in this franchise, we can kind of, we can see it with a wider, angle lens that maybe they can't. And obviously, it's a business. These movies have made, more than $1 billion each. No one's hurting.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So, so we'll see how that goes. So here's a comment that I see a lot, and I'm going to post this up, and it's Rural Farm Boy's comment, and we can talk a little bit about that. He says, "No Star Wars stories tailor-made to our wants," and that's, I don't want to say it's controversial, but it's definitely a take that a lot of people are saying. I had an argument with, a discussion with one of the guys at Rebel Force Radio when I did this last show. I was a guest on one of the Star Wars shows here in Chicago, but I used the term fan service, and he got a little offended at that. But I used it only because when somebody says fan service, you know what it means. So I just used it at that term. I didn't use it to be derogatory in any way, because obviously I'm a fan, and I'm a fan of Star Wars. And if you're not going to make a Star Wars movie for fans of Star Wars,
right,
then who the hell are you making this movie for? So to me, like, fan service is not like a bad word. But what do you guys think as far as fans kind of dictating, or at least wishing a story went one way versus another way? And obviously, with the divide that this fandom is currently experiencing, it's a very interesting topic that Rural Farm Boy brings up, as far as we're not writers, we're not filmmakers, but we would like to see certain things in a Star Wars movie. Doesn't that give us the right to at least tell these studios, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Other than just being passive and saying, all right, that's the story that I got. Let's move on. What do you guys think of that statement per se?
I would hope that, not that they're tailor-made for a fan, but I would hope that there's a group or a system out there that listens to the fans and recognizes, some of our disappointments and the things that we appreciate, and try to, work towards those. When I think of are we freezing up? No.
Yeah.
I think of the scene when Luke, Force Ghost, catches the lightsaber and says that a lightsaber should be respected, or whatever he says. I thought that was a stab at the Last Jedi, kind of, or maybe it was saying, hey, you know what? Fans that said that Luke was done wrong in The Last Jedi, we're fixing it right now for you. And I was actually kind of shocked that happened. Do I really think that was the true message? Not necessarily. I think it was Luke coming to the realization that, that he learned from his failure and that he had chosen the wrong path for a while. But the way it came off, wow.
But let me ask you this though. I understand that you're separating the filmmakers from the character in universe, but there's no character in universe without the filmmaker. So the filmmaker, I think, in this case, has to come first. If JJ's intention was to say, look, I would have done The Last Jedi a little different. This is a hint of me maybe doing it a little different. So there's, like I said, I can understand separating the two, but you can't.
Yeah.
The filmmaker is the one that's making the choice for the character in this case. Right. Rob, what do you think of that?
It goes back to the conversation we were having before, which, within the original trilogy, within the prequel trilogy, you had George Lucas really driving the story. And now that he is no longer part of it, they've got the story group that's supposed to be doing that. I agree with some of the comments I've seen in chat. I do think it's hard to believe that they would have embarked on a trilogy without having mapped out at least a general direction that things were supposed to go.
I agree with that.
But I totally agree with the fact that it didn't feel like that was what happened with the film. And when you look at the turnover that they've had, Colin Trevorrow was supposed to be the director for the third film. He ended up leaving the project. They've had this issue now a number of times within the Star Wars side of the house, where they have had to either let directors go or creative differences or whatever the case may be, and they bring someone else in kind of late in the game. That seems to be something that needs to be addressed, because I'm just not getting the feeling. I thought that within The Force Awakens, JJ had set up a lot of things. First and foremost, everyone wanted to know who the heck Snoke was, right? And they were being deliberately ambiguous about who Snoke was. And it just, to me, reeked of something where they were planning on doing a big reveal with him later. And it certainly would be a big reveal, considered a big reveal, to have it be that Palpatine was behind Snoke the whole time. Actually, when we did Scarif Con, we went out to dinner and I had that conversation with Yoshi where I was talking about how my thought was that Ben Solo had been corrupted, kind of communing with that helmet of Darth Vader, and the fact that, it would be kind of cool if we found out that Palpatine had kind of infused his essence into that helmet, like the Mask of Mulman, and he was the one who was kind of working through Vader's voice on Ben Solo and ended up turning him to Kylo Ren. And so when that kind of came full circle within this film, I kind of had a little moment of elation, and that was pretty early in the film as well. So it was kind of, I could see how that story arc developed. I agree. I mean, everything doesn't have to be done specifically the way the fans would like it done, but I think Star Wars fans are generally pretty forgiving. All we want is something that feels like it belongs within the Star Wars universe and is a unique story. And it stops the suspension of disbelief when you have things happening that aren't consistent with kind of the guidelines that have been laid out before. And there was some of that within this trilogy. And I feel like that is part of what started to cause the schism. But, ultimately, would I rather have these Star Wars films? For a while, we didn't think we were going to get any more, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just happy that Star Wars is still alive and kicking. And I think that, they're going to have times where they hit it out of the park, and they're going to have times where, they're going to have an imperfect movie, maybe an imperfect trilogy. But I certainly hope if they embark on series of films in the future, that they kind of at least roadmap it. I think the directors can have their own individual, flavor within each episode. But the thing for me is that different directors, I think of like an Irvin Kershner, he elevated Star Wars while still being true to what Star Wars was. And I think that's the role of a director within a Star Wars film. It's not to turn Star Wars to their ends. It's to bring Star Wars, elevate Star Wars, kind of with their personal flair or their personal flavor.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, we talk about directors bringing their own voice to it. Something, and again, this is something that we probably will never know what happened behind the scenes with the Solo filming and the letting go of the two directors. Mm-hmm. There were some rumors for a while that they were saying that they were turning Solo into kind of like a slapstick, Ace Ventura character. And when I heard that, and then when I heard that, and I realized that the directors were let go, I'm like, wow, I think we dodged a bullet. If that were the case, but yeah, it's just so it would have been really, really different if they really went that route. Obviously, with such an iconic character as Han Solo, to turn him into I don't know, slapsticky. But it's it's interesting going forward. What do you guys, Andrea, Lauren? What do you guys think of Star Wars in the future now that we're done with Rise of Skywalker? We made it. We stayed alive to see Episode 9.
Barely.
Yeah. I honestly think the future is really bright. I think you and I talked about this before, where I think now that we're out of that familiarity area, and now you can just do something brand new characters, new adventures. I mean, the reports of the High Republic, 300 to 400 years, I'm okay with that. I'm actually looking forward to it. Then you have maybe a Yoda in there where you could get that, again, familiarity, but you can still push new characters and new adventures. So I'm excited, and I think that they're, I'm digging what they're doing. I mean, The Mandalorian has been great. I think we're going to get a lot more, Disney Plus series. I really do. I think we're going to get a lot more stuff within that service. And then I'm what I would like to see, and maybe this is just me, like maybe, I know we were kind of talking about how, you don't have to watch a TV show to, understand what's going on in a movie, but maybe have, it connect a little bit to where like these TV shows that we're watching and then the movies that come out, they're connected, but they're not like so connected where you have to watch it. And they're just pulling things like, oh yeah, that's from the show, that makes sense. So I hope they start doing that in the future for sure.
I think there's definitely some room for connectivity, and I know Star Wars and Marvel are two different entities, but Marvel did it for a while with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the films that were coming out. It is a hard task because there are timing issues that really have to work out in the long run, and schedules are always in flux. My hat's out to those two teams, Marvel and the Star Wars people that try to give us some great content. So, getting back to, The Mandalorian, you've got, a project like The Mandalorian that is like hitting it out of the park as far as popularity. Yeah. But then you've also got these films that are very, I don't want to use the word iffy, but, the reception of the fans between the films and the TV series, it's kind of like a weird, like two-sided coin that Lucasfilm is producing. On one side, this great show that everybody seems to love, and on the other side, these movies that are like, we can do without. I mean, it's such a weird dichotomy there that I don't understand how both projects are coming from the same studio.
I think a little bit of why The Mandalorian has, captured everybody is not Baby Yoda, but that it's new and it's not something that they're used to, and it's not a story that they know or maybe knew or read about once. and that's what's keeping people united behind this story. When you get into the Skywalker saga, everybody thinks of it in a different way, and that's what's causing the divide.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just like we were talking about, like the familiarity. Like, we've grown up with all these original trilogy characters in this story, this saga of the Skywalkers. And I think we had so many preconceived notions going into the sequel trilogy that I think maybe, I mean, I can speak for me that like, yeah, I got in my own head a little bit with like what I wanted to see, like we were kind of talking about earlier. Like, yeah, I wish they would have did this and that. And I mean, I'm glad that we got what we and, I'm excited by your saga and, when everything comes out. But yeah, I agree with Andrea. Like, with The Mandalorian, it's all brand new. Like, we have no idea who this character is, where he comes from, all these new characters. That's what
different timeline.
Yeah, and I think I think that's what's exciting is that now they can get away from that whole area and era, and now they can just do brand new. And that's where I think expectations can just be kind of let go, and maybe we can go into these new movies kind of like when people were going into 1977 with no expectations,
Sure.
no idea what to expect. But now we kind of have an idea of what the galaxy is, but it's all brand new though at the same time.
I agree. I think our expectations, play a critical role when we go into a Star Wars. Obviously, growing up with this franchise, there's a lot of material there. But going forward, I think Star Wars is hopefully in a good place to kind of explore outside that sandbox that we already know, and try to tell new stories. I think as fans, I don't care who tells a story. Black, white, Hispanic, female, male, whatever. As long as you tell a really good story, I think fans will come.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And I think, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau obviously are doing a fantastic job with what they're doing with The Mandalorian and the story there. I can't wait for season 2. So, kudos to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, it's like The Mandalorian. It's brand new, so I think that's what really drove it. I mean, yeah, Baby Yoda has a huge impact on that, but...
Yeah, no one saw that coming.
Yeah, but,
No,
I mean...
yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but it's just that new, feel, but yet still familiar and similar at the same time. Though.
Yeah.
It's a good mix. It's a really
Yeah,
good mix.
Cybersonic8472 says, I think The Mandalorian feels like classic Star Wars, visually, humor, in a world that everyone is excited about.
I would agree with
think
that.
that encompasses everyone's thoughts on The Mandalorian perfectly.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Rob, any final thoughts? Well, we are talking Star Wars here, and again, time is running out. We're having such a great time, and ladies, we'd love to have you back, again for another talk. This feels like we've been just talking for 5 minutes, man. It's
I know. It really does.
Every time.
Every time. It's like we're over an hour, and it's like, what?
No, I mean, I talked a little bit with Yoshi about this in the interview that I did with him today, and he made a really great point, which is that we all kind of connect with our Star Wars, in a very intimate way. And for those of us who started out in the original trilogy, we certainly have a very deep connection to that. There's other people that have, they're kind of in that group where they grew up watching the prequels and they have a connection to that. Now we're going to have a whole nother generation of people that grew up watching these sequel films. But, he was talking about the fact that when we collect things, we form these very deep attachments, and then when things change in a way that we're unfamiliar with, it can be kind of like a breakup or a relationship change, and it's hard. I mean, you have to kind of determine whether you still have that same attraction to it, or whether you just have to set it aside. And I thought it was a really deep thought from someone who has now worked on both of these projects. But I definitely agree that with The Mandalorian, it is because it's new. There's no expectation there, and they went in there and they put together a really good product, and people were drawn to that because it did feel like Star Wars. And I think that Disney is in a position now where they're going to be launching future Star Wars films that we're not going to be tied to any previous expectations of what we're going to get, and people are going to be a little bit more free to just enjoy it for what it is, and get away from that Skywalker saga, which I'm actually a little disappointed. I waited that entire saga, the entire last trilogy, to see Rey finally get her, what I assume is a dual-bladed saber staff, which I thought that she should have. I was expecting her to end up with that really after the Skywalker lightsaber got shattered.
Yeah.
I was thinking she was going to come back in the third film with the saber staff,
Right.
but
It's in the JJ cut.
Yeah.
right. Bring it.
Oh, that JJ cut.
Yeah. But, somebody said something very interesting regarding the whole JJ cut. And, you don't hire a director as powerful as JJ Abrams to kind of slash him at the knees. I think he did the best he could from a story perspective to end this film the way he did. If we get another edit of the film, it'll probably still be his vision, maybe a little longer. Obviously, there are implications of putting a longer film in the theaters from a business standpoint. So I can't wait to see more of The Rise of Skywalker when the DVD comes out, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah. Rise of Skywalker special edition coming out in 6 months. So.
That's what I said. Can't wait.
So, ladies, thank you very much. How can folks find you? Where are you doing your podcast? Please let everyone know.
Ooh, that's
you.
me. That's me. All right, you can follow us at the Galactic Pod on Twitter. That's kind of where we're more so on social media. We can go to dgtradeco.com. That's where you can get some cool merch. We're on Apple Pod, Google Play, Spotify now. You can follow me at Loro Knows on Twitter.
You can follow me, Andrew Gutierrez, at R2D Two Step.
Yeah.
Nice. Rob on Twitter. Rob, Jedi Temple Archives. Where are you at?
Certainly. You can find the podcast pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you don't have a preferred player, go check us out at jtapodcast.com. You can get us at email at jtapodcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest on JTA Podcast. So we're usually out on Twitter and looking to do possibly some live streams in the future, some collaboration. Obviously, I always love doing collaborations with you guys, Ro, and looks like we're going to have Charles and Pat on the show here pretty soon.
Nice.
So we love doing crossovers with other pods.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast with the Galactic Podcast, Andrea and Lauren.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Big fan of your podcast. Love you guys. Love listening to your stuff. And Rob, obviously, you are probably one of our major partners in crime. We're gonna be setting something up in March, and it's going to be. We're still kind of planning some stuff. One of the biggest joys of me doing this podcast with everybody else is the collaboration. And the thing that we're planning to do in March is something that will include a lot of us podcasters. So I can't wait to announce that and to be able to go forward and include a lot of you guys in it. I'm just pleased as punch, cool as a cucumber, just talking Star Wars with all of our Star Wars friends. And again, we have this little campaign called hashtag Road to 1500. If you guys are not, anybody in the chat or whoever wants to listen, please subscribe to the Scuttlebutt podcast, the Jedi Temple Archives, and the Galactic Podcast. Subscribe to us. Tell us what you like. Subscribe to us on YouTube for those of us who have also the YouTube channel. But also on Twitter. We are, once we reach 1,500 followers, we are giving away this awesome Creating the Worlds of Star Wars 365 Days book. It is a beautiful behind-the-scenes look at the saga. It's got great pictures and stories and anecdotes about the filming. And obviously, everybody that has listened to the podcast knows that I was inspired career-wise and personally by the folks behind the scenes at ILM, and this is just kind of a token of thank you for folks that listen to the podcast and interact with all of our podcast friends. So please follow and subscribe and interact with us. That's one of the best things about being a content creator is that we interact with everybody. Wouldn't you say that that's the case, guys?
Oh yeah. It's fun talking to you guys, talking to all the other podcasts. I know we talked to the Bombad Cast before, Beyond the Outer Rim.
Beyond the Outer Rim, yeah.
Yeah, so it is fun just talking Star Wars. It's just fun.
Excellent. Thank you guys in the chat, everyone that contributed, everyone that stayed up past my bedtime to join us on the on this. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks guys.
I hope everybody has a great day, fantastic day. Let's keep on doing what we do, and we'll see you guys out there on Twitter and the Star Wars universe. And that's the Scuttlebutt. Beautiful, guys.
Nice. That was
Cool.
great.
This was so much fun. Like I said,